the fourth NBS broadcast. This is Darcania, accompanied with Abbey.
Hello.
And Ornge.
Hello.
Our first topic for today is why the SC reform bill failed.
Indeed, it's an interesting one because it was doing so well. And then people like me turned around and went, actually, we don't want this the way it is. There's things we haven't thought about. So I think what happened was it just didn't get enough debate. There was a lot of people who read it and went, yeah, that looks good, that looks well written, and it looks like we want that. And didn't actually go through it clause by clause and go, do we want this in the form that it's in? Are there any repercussions that we haven't thought about? It's not like a lot of bills. In many ways, I'd rather it failed and we looked at it rather than us realising this and then it passing like several recent bills. So, yeah. What do you guys think?
I think we need to improve participation in the RA after that. That went through 3 original proposals. I mean, the original 2 were a different format, but for each of them, Silly String proposed her version.
Yeah.
And then when it was finally actually proposed, it was in debate for like at least a week, not counting all the other times it was talked about.
And I think 3 people talked about it in that week, and then it just sort of faded away into obscurity.
I think we should have the speakers should not just administrate things, but that there should be schemes to actively improve our participation, because we've got a lot of active citizens, including me, who don't really pay that much attention to the RA. And we've got a problem in that because that is our only legislative organ, it can't be pushed. We just need more people involved and more people interested. And yeah, I think you're right. That's the lesson we should take away from this.
I mean, there's interest in it now since there was a vote on it and it failed.
Yeah, and I think that's another good thing about that we did. Well, that was you, Dark, wasn't it? You were the proposer of this bill, right?
It's because I proposed it. Every bill I propose either fails or is vetoed by Plemby, so...
Well, hopefully this one will
I'm sorry, Silly String, it's my fault.
But
I think this bill will get through. I think next time it's voted on, people don't have fundamental objections to it. People have technical objections to it.
Yeah. So, and at the very least, I think we should get the how this originally started was the increasing the difficulty to get into the SC, the Security Council, increasing the endo count and the influence levels. And if at the very least we could still get that through, I think that's definitely something that needs to be updated as the game grows. And
yeah, I think
300 endorsements is not that much.
No, not anymore. You can get pretty much that much with one bout of endo-tarting, basically. It really doesn't take that much to get to 300 anymore. Yes, the influence requirement's a little harder because it requires time, but it's still a case of you don't need all that many endos to get it in a semi-reasonable amount of time. So yeah, I think you're right, but I think the bill as it is in a slightly altered form, once we deal with the possibility of elections, and the possibility of someone who isn't on the Security Council already getting the vice delegacy.
Yeah, like Toom was an NPA soldier, so he didn't have very many endos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is entirely reasonable. It's not like he didn't have a WA in the region because he had it elsewhere or anything like that. It was just he was an MPA person. So I think it'll get through. I think next vote it'll get through, but just with an extra clause added to deal with elections.
Yeah.
Well, the clause is kind of like already there. It's just it's not enough time. Like, it seems it was mostly that time limit was mostly written for like an SC member becoming the vice delegate or stuff like that. Because 15 days is a pretty short amount of time.
I mean, Toom was really actively endo-tarting. Like, he was sending telegrams as well and all the rest of it.
And Cash and everyone else was advertising on the RMB.
Yeah, it was a massive thing, and not every, like, entirely reasonably, it's not every endorsement campaign is going to be that intense.
Yeah.
So, or it could just be that the people in the region are more lethargic than they were this time. I think the fact that it took Toom about that long to get into the position with everything that was done tells us that time limit isn't quite long enough. I think, to be honest, I'm not sure I want a time limit for the time it takes the vice delegate to get into office. I think it should be like that once elected, the vice delegate needs to get into the second position, and once they're in the second position, the other limits apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, the strategy I'm thinking for the next version of the SCR bill, no time limit, just basically promptly or as quickly as possible, because by that I think if it ever gets to like a request for review, one can argue non-feasance if the newly elected vice delegate is really lazy about getting new endos. Yeah. So I think
that's what I'm thinking as well. I think that will work best and deals with more possibilities than the strict time limit. So it failed because we hadn't considered a fairly significant possibility.
One of the other issues is that it requires too many endorsements of the vice delegate. I think it's right now it's at the delegates endorsement count minus 1/10 of the total WA in the region, which is too close of a margin. Like, you have to get really close to the delegate, and since Plemby was an incumbent and Toom was not, that's just way too difficult.
Just being in the second place position should be enough for the vice delegate, I think.
Well,
because
I would think
that has an inherent endorsement limit. There are always going to be active SC members who have high endorsement counts.
Yeah, but I think a second highest, but at least 50 above the next person or something like that.
Yeah. Oh,
Instead
yeah.
of having
just second highest.
Yeah. Well, like, I'm trying to think. Like, you wouldn't have just the vice delegate be one above, and then them and one of the SC members just constantly leapfrogging each other.
I suppose the only problem you have there with the way you've formulated that is if the delegate isn't that high above the highest security councillor. So I think perhaps in terms of, I don't know how you do it. Maybe have a requirement for the delegate as well, and then have the requirement for the vice delegate just be less than that. I'm not quite sure how it will end up being framed, but certainly I think that's the better way of handling it.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I don't think there are any other major problems with the bill. I think largely it was a pretty good bill that looked alright, and I think that's why it very nearly passed. So yeah.
Yep.
What else?
Next topic is how you found nation states. We're going from one thing to a wildly different thing here.
I'm trying to remember. It was such a long time ago. I think, as I remember it, I was summer holidays. I was bored, and I was looking around, and I searched for something completely different, and ended up finding nation states. I think on one of the ad bars, going, okay, that looks interesting, and ending up playing the game for the last 6.5 years. So I think that was how it happened. And then I've started playing. Yeah, and all sorts happened.
For me, I was talking with my sister, who is a 5-year nation states veteran, I think, at this point, but she doesn't play anymore. She ceased to exist a long while ago. But I was talking with her about how I couldn't find any good online roleplay communities, and then she just randomly suggested nation states to me. So I joined that. That's how I joined nation states. I wanted to roleplay, and my sister suggested that to me. I got founded in TNP, and I never really left.
Mine's a bit more boring than that, but will require a little bit of backstory. But I was in 7th grade, which I think means I was 12. I don't know. I was younger than I am now. But this was about 2-3 years ago, and our school decided to give all of our students iPads. And me being the excellent student that I was, well, me and my friends immediately started looking for something to spend our time on, because, who actually wants to be in school? And then Frozen Top Hat found it first. And because, in case you guys don't know, we actually know each other. We live like a couple miles away, whatever. And he got me into it. And then, yeah, I can't speak for him. I played only game side, very R&B heavy, answered issues, all that stuff for about a year. And then I got onto the forum, and then, yeah.
That's quite cool. Have you guys ever run up against issues with things like admin checks then? Or have you always been pretty careful not to do things with the same IP when you can?
Well, yeah, we don't live like together. We're not related or anything. But we've never gotten in trouble because we've never done admin checks at like each other's houses. I did get in trouble, and I think I'm still getting telegrams about this. But one time I logged in at his house, and this would have been 2 years ago now. But pretty early 2015, and I am still getting telegrams about you can't have 2 WA nations on one IP.
Whoops.
So that's been a bit annoying. But no, we've never run into like citizenship checks and stuff like that. We've never. Well, actually, I think we've both.
Because I can imagine that you might.
Yeah. Well, we both initially applied from our school IP, and I think that was the bigger issue. But that wasn't. Yeah.
I've never really had an issue with admin checks. Like, the only issue with admin checks that came up recently is my roommate joined nation states recently, and I told him like, we we share an IP address, so you can't really join TNP. So, but he's pretty much just playing gameplay right now. He's new. One of those tiny little nations of less than a billion people. All that stuff.
Yeah, like I've only had potential issues, and I have had potential issues, and I've always gotten away with it. Is where I've had NSs visiting. So I've had a few NSs visit my flat. And I've always been surprised that it's never been an issue, because we'll have both been on NS while we were together. But I think, fortunately, like certainly with things like WA nations, there's enough saying that we're different that I've never run into problems with it. But my boyfriend does play NS, so there's always a risk there, because we just have to remember not to share devices. Is the big thing. We have to remember not to touch each other's devices, and where necessary, people who need to be told that we're two different people have been told. So yeah. What's next?
The next topic is the vice delegate transition in Project Endo. Kind of already covered this. It was very successful. Thank you everyone who endorsed whom. And don't forget to keep endorsing him, and just everybody who hasn't endorsed him, just go ahead and keep endorsing him. Plan B is pretty far ahead at this point. Keep endorsing too.
Yeah, just saying, Steve gets a bit closer to Plan B.
Like that's the main issue with an incumbent delegate and a non-incumbent vice delegate there.
Yeah, but over time it will get sorted. It's a pretty long term, so it'll get dealt with. As long as people keep endorsing too. Okay, so we already covered that.
All right, so the next topic is Syrixia's resignation and the future of the Ministry of Cultural Affairs.
I think it's sad that he's resigned, but I can completely understand why, because I've walked from nation states one for precisely that reason. So
yeah, whoever's the next minister has some pretty big shoes to fill.
Yeah, definitely.
Like he was a very, very successful minister of culture.
He did an awful lot of really good work. So I should imagine that's why Plan B's taking his time trying to find the right person to fill those very big shoes.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, but does anybody know who his deputy ministers were? Other than Cash, of course.
Yeah, it's Cash, Goyanis, and me. That's the deputy. That were his deputy ministers. Cash, Goyanis, and me.
And you obviously can't.
No, I can be a minister of culture.
No, because Attorney General is.
It's executive, so.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, you're a justice. You should know this.
I look things up. I don't have an inherent understanding of TMP law. I just read.
I mean, I guess I pretty much specialize in that area now, because people kept asking me why I appointed Toom as basically a deputy.
Oh yeah.
But a vice delegate is also executive, so he totally can be.
Well, it doesn't matter because deputies aren't government officials. I thought that was why that wasn't a problem.
What was that? Oh, deputy ministers are not government officials, but deputy attorney generals, deputy speakers, those are government officials.
Yeah.
Because deputy ministers.
They're elective, yeah.
Yeah, deputy ministers are appointed by appointees, but deputy speakers and deputy attorney generals are appointed by elected officials.
And ministers.
What? No. Deputy attorney generals and deputy speakers are not appointed by ministers.
Yeah, but ministers are appointed by elected officials,
Yes.
being the delegate. So,
Yes,
hence
it's
the
a bit of a-
reason
So,
that
like,
Cash could
Ornge
not
here?
conceivably be part of the Minister of
Cash-
Communications and the mini cult.
Cash cannot be a deputy speaker despite expressing interest in it.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Ornge cannot be the Minister of Culture by law.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a great pain for you to hear, Ornge.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just all of that all that writing with the RP, just really, really into that.
And I think it's important that we have an active Minister of Culture, and I think what Sirixia has done is proven that it can be an active ministry that does things and actually encourages culture within the region. I think a little bit, certainly for me in the past, it's always felt like a bit of a should we even have this ministry type situation. Because we've had lots of relatively inactive ministers of culture, and then Sirixia comes along and just turns it into one of the most active ministries we have, who is doing things and increasing activity. And yeah, it's going to be tough for Plan B.
Yeah, I
It's going to
don't
be tough for
envy
whoever
him that
Sirixia's
decision.
replacement is. What was that?
Well, I was going to say I don't envy Flambabria his decision here, because it's definitely not anything. It's not an easy decision.
I don't envy Sirixia's successor either.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool. So we've got one that's more of an interest for me next, because of my involvement in WA affairs. The incredibly close vote that was actually at one of Condemn Elite Region of Global Command. There was, in fact, at one point, I believe, actually tied, completely actually tied. And I never thought I'd see that in a less vote.
Especially not a modern one with so many WA nations and delegates.
Yeah, and there's just too much movement as well. The fact that it was tied and it stayed tied.
I mean, according to Sil Dorset's post on the forum, Ilisa, the reinstated delegate of the East Pacific, did not vote for it. It did not vote, but his previous Todd McLeod voted for it, and that if Ilisa had voted for it, it would have passed by a margin of 19 votes.
But I think the point that you can take away with that is that Alita, while a delegate with a reasonable number of votes could swing it, that says that individual WA nations could also have swung it.
Oh, absolutely. This was less than 5% margin here.
So it's important if you want, I'm not expressing myself very well here. Basically, it's important to vote in the WA if you actually care about whether things pass or fail, and it's not worth not voting because you don't think you'll make a difference, because you can, even with the awesome voting power of people like Plan B. But it was a really interesting vote to watch, with the fact they just kept on flipping either side, and that there was a lot of interest in a resolution that would normally not have gotten that much interest. It's just a standard condemnation.
I mean, it's a pretty, I don't know the word, like, not really controversial, but like, people have very differing opinions on what condemned should be. And
Yes.
And so some people think condemning applies to what elite region of global command does, and some people do not.
And that was
But
why
like,
it was so tight.
yeah, the funny thing is, one of the arguments against condemning elite region of global command is all the publicity they get from that condemnation being on the books, and now it's one of the most interesting WA resolutions in a while.
And so they've got an absolute ton of publicity.
Yeah, funny how that works.
Well, and I think that kind of branches into the larger argument of most regions and nations that have been condemned are wearing that as a badge of honor. Like, it's not they are proud of that in the same way that a region or nation that is what is the other thing the Security Council does that is commended
and liberate.
Yeah. And like some raiders wear that condemned tag the same way defenders will wear the commend tag. And I think that definitely played into that as well.
Yeah,
it kind of raises a question for me, like, if raiders will take condemns as a badge of honor, then really what is condemning for, really? That's what I wonder now.
It makes you wonder whether there should be in-game penalties for condemns and in-game advantages for commends. Because just as badges, they're not really working.
Yeah, they don't really do much of anything.
Nobody really cares if they get condemned, and like most people who would be condemned will view a condemn as almost an endorsement of their activities, saying that they're doing the right thing, because that's the sort of region that would get condemned in the first place.
Haters gonna hate.
Yeah, pretty much. So, we're running out of things to talk about.
Like, we did talk about Sirix's resignation and the choice of minister, but we really didn't really talk about, like, what would, like, mini-cult... I'd say we should ask the question, like, what do we want as minister? Because, like, I'm sure Plemby is having some really difficult decisions in front of him. And also, like, what we would like to see from the Ministry of Culture under this new minister.
I'd like to see more, from my perspective, the Minister of Culture doesn't do that much for me because I'm not an RPer.
Well, we do a lot of out-of-character stuff too. Like the Nation States World Fair we handled. We had a bit of a festival with the South Pacific, a drop in the ocean. But
yeah,
I mean,
more sort of day-to-day stuff.
Like lately, we haven't been focusing as much on role play. Like, mostly that's just been Magic's domain right there, just handling role play. But we have been working on a project with roleplay, which Sirixia really hopes to actually get fully done through. But it'll take a lot of organizing. I don't envy the next minister for that. But we don't really have as much control over roleplay as people might think we do. Like, at most, we just liaison with the roleplay moderators, and that's it. They're the ones who handle roleplay aspects.
Yeah, I suppose that's true, and I suppose that's a misunderstanding perhaps that I had. So now I know. See, I think I'd like to see more of like you say, like the interregional stuff with TSP and stuff, because that can be interesting for all involved.
I mean, I'd personally like to see more of that, like more integration with foreign affairs, and also some more game side stuff. Like mostly we've been focusing on foreign stuff, but I'd love to see more cultural activity within game side as well.
Yeah.
Like Prater, when he was Minister of Foreign Affairs and also the lead R&B moderator, he did pretty well with both of those. And where he worked well with Syrixia at setting up these interregional festivals and stuff like that. And also he did pretty well, despite being busy with foreign affairs stuff. He did pretty well at encouraging at least some amount of culture game side, like with the polls he kept putting up and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think there are things that can be done that will engage people from both game side and forum side, and I think that should be something that the culture should work with game side. Well, no, there isn't game side affairs anymore, but
now it's home affairs.
yeah, as part of home affairs, to encourage stuff on both sides, both forum and game side, and get the two sides to mix much more. Because we might encourage people onto the forums that way.
Yeah, like the recruitment stuff and the mentoring program of the HA is great, but I think like developing more culture and like easing that gap between the game side and forums will definitely also help with both getting new citizens and retaining citizens.
Yeah. Oh shit.
So, yeah, and I think you're right. I think the more interaction that GameSide has with the forum and with the people on the forum as well, because most of the people on the forum don't do much on GameSide, and most of the people on GameSide don't do much on the forum. And any ministry that can combine those two and get the two sides talking will be beneficial to the region as a whole, and will gain us active citizens and active engagement.
Still don't envy the next minister, though.
No, me neither.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that's gonna take a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of new ideas.
I think that's the biggest strain of the ministry of culture, is coming up with new ideas all the time.
It's like I told Syrixia, like he's really, really great with having just as many ideas as possible and just shotgunning them at people, essentially. And like
knowing that some won't work, but that's okay.
Yeah, just have as many ideas as possible. And then having the activity to bring through any ideas that are fully developed.
Yeah. And I think it's actually one of the hardest ministries, because it's got the least guidance as to what they should be doing.
You're free to do pretty much just whatever, except that's just, you would have no idea what to do in such a huge space. It's like trying to paint a gigantic canvas. Just don't know even where to start.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I absolutely couldn't do it. I'd be a rubbish minister of culture. So, yeah. I think because we can't do Dear Yelkin, do we want to
Dear
do
Abbey.
Dear someone else? Or are we going to do Dear Abbey? Okay.
Dear Abbey.
Have we got any questions for Dear Abbey?
Could also steal some of Yolkan's from the Dear Yolkan thread.
We could. He might be a bit pissed at us, but hey, he didn't show up. So
Yep, didn't show up, so not his place to say.
indeed. So what am I answering? Where is D?
I put a link in the Discord chat.
Okay.
Oh, you got a question from Ornge.
Ornge is Abbey with an EY. Because that's how I spell it, and that's how I've always spelt it, and that's how I've spelt it my whole life. Because that is what is on my birth certificate. Because I'm really inventive and use my actual name. Right. Is there any
Should we talk about the origins of our nation states' names?
We can talk a bit more about our early days in nation states.
I mean, really, we could just talk more about anything at this point. We still have like 23 minutes, I think.
We do indeed.
My roommate suggests Pokemon, but I don't know Pokemon.
I'm not good enough at Pokemon. I kind of play it occasionally, but I'm not like, oh, I can talk about different types and which works best against which type and all that sort of thing. I can't do that. I just don't know it. There's no recent things in D. Olkin's thread. This last one
Steal
was
some old questions.
Still some old questions. Okay. We'll go back to January the 26th. That one doesn't apply. Dear Yolkin or Dear Abbey, do you believe in aliens? Yes, I do. I believe that the chances of there not being other life is astronomically small, given how astronomically huge the universe is and how it would appear that life has evolved in. Well, there's some pretty crazy environments on Earth. I mean, I actually had to write an essay on this last semester, so I'm perhaps a little bit more informed than I was, but I was writing an essay on the possibility of life on Europa. And my conclusion is that I'll be surprised if there's not. I think life has almost certainly evolved, at least in our solar system, twice. If not, if it can evolve in one solar system, then it's going to evolve in others. Just life is very tenacious. And I think that there are aliens. Whether we will ever have any contact with them is a whole other problem, but I believe they exist. So, next one. Who is your favourite friend? My boyfriend, probably.
Probably.
Well, it's your favourite friend, and so I feel like, does my boyfriend count? If I had to say anything other than my boyfriend, I've got a real life friend who I made in the first year I was at university, who I have stayed friends with through a difficult few years, and they've stayed with me. So I would have to say them. Next one. Is Santa real? No, Santa is not real.
Oh my God, what?
Spoiler alert, Santa is your parents. Diokin, last song you listened to? Oh, I wouldn't know, because it would have been something in my car that I wasn't really paying attention to. The last song I listened to when I was actually paying attention to what I was listening to was a remix of Going Wrong by Armin van Buuren, which is actually my favourite song.
Dear Abby, you should pay attention to the Mixler chat as well.
I know. I was going through the forum thread first. It wasn't. Was it? It wasn't meant as a pun. It was just meant as an apt descriptor. It was just meant as. I didn't mean it as a pun. No, that pun was not intentional. I just meant, yeah, I just meant that the universe is astronomically huge.
I mean, there's a reason that astronomically refers to such a gigantic amount.
Yes. That was my point. I wasn't trying to. Oh, I feel bad now. Are there any other questions? Is there anything else anyone wants to ask me? Because I'm running out of ideas and I've run out of questions. I could go further back in the DLCon thread. No, there's nothing fun. What inspired me to begin Dear Abby? I got forced into it. If people remember from 2 broadcasts ago, it was the same situation. Yolkin wasn't around, so someone decided to start Dear Abby. That's. Don't you think Yolkin will be jealous of how much greater Dear Abby is than Dear Yolkin? I don't know. Yolkin well enough to know whether he'll be jealous, but I'm not going to say whether Dear Abby is better than Dear Yolkin or not. They're just different. So, will there be a Dear Abby spin-off? What on earth would a Dear Abby spin-off be? I have no idea what a Dear Abby spin-off would be.
Dear Abby's boyfriend.
Dear Abby's boyfriend. He would never do that because that would reveal who he is.
He's Abby's boyfriend.
Yes, but he's also an NSer. So.
Just speak in a really manly voice.
No, I don't do that sort of thing. I just don't. I'm rubbish at it. So yeah, I think we've pretty much run out of steam here. Because I've certainly run out of steam. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, we don't really have as many Dear Abby questions as we have Dear Yolkan questions.
And an even greater issue than that, TMP's been pretty slow over the last couple of weeks.
It has indeed. It's been very slow, and I think that's a problem. And I think the government should be doing things to encourage activity because things are really bad, actually. And I think unless some activity is whipped up and reasonably soon, we're going to start having problems.
You're a very experienced TNPer. What's your analysis on the recent slump in activity?
As Tombs just pointed out in the Mixer chat, NS in general is very quiet right now, which is odd because normally this time of year is pretty active.
And you think more people would be involved in political thought than ever?
Yeah, I think people are too distracted by real life right now. I think there's too many things going on in real life.
My roommate suggests that after the recent U.S. presidential elections, people are just sick of politics in general.
Yeah, and I think that's probably spot on. That people just don't want to do a political simulator right now because they're just sick of politics and
It's too real.
Yeah, it's too real. It's too close to home. I think the other problem TNP has is we lost several active citizens, and that won't have helped matters. Because there is actually a reasonably small group of fairly active people who drive most activity.
It's like I think Moldavi said in Discord chat a while back, like only like 0.1% of all residents are actually citizens in the North Pacific. And, you know, there's a lot of puppets in TNP, but like not all of them are puppets, for one. There's at least 1,000 people in TNP. And also, like, even out of all those citizens, not a relatively small percentage are active citizens.
Yeah, we have actually it's quite a shock when you look at the roles. We actually have quite a lot of citizens, but very
I think we're
few
around 160 off the top of my head.
Yeah, exactly. But actually very few people drive the activity in the region.
Yeah, if it's 160 citizens, then like that's a tenth of our WA nations, and those are by the rules of nation states unique people, and there are undoubtedly other people in TNP who have WA elsewhere, like Aluvatar.
And also a lot of newer nations who don't have WA.
Yeah.
But are also unique people.
Yeah, and after my short time in the speaker's office, what I noticed is we gain about 6 people every week.
Yeah, it's about that I do checks.
And we lose citizens at about the same rate.
Yeah, we've had a pretty constant size for a little while. I think it's not a ridiculous rate of conversion actually when you think about it, but it's the keeping hold of people is our problem. And I think that's something Home Affairs should really push for, especially when activity is so low. A splurge of new people would be.
Quick, somebody get on the front page of Imgur.
Imager.
We can. Yeah. I think Ennis is having a slump at the minute. I think we had quite a lot of big surges, and that drove activity through a relatively inactive period. And now lots of people have disappeared, and lots is going on in real life. And I just think people aren't interested in NS right now. We might find as we get further into university semesters, we might get a bit of a boost like sort of next month before exams hit, but after the start of the semester. But I don't know. So yeah, I think we've pretty much run out of things. Has anyone else got any ideas as to what to talk about?
Well, I mean, like with the whole like gaining citizens and retaining them, like that is Home Affairs' job, but I really do think the other ministries can really help out with that.
Yes,
like Foreign Affairs generally getting more people in foreign regions interested in the North Pacific, or Cultural Affairs setting up like I said earlier, like both game side and forum side, the culture of TNP that gets people more excited to be involved in all that stuff.
And when you say that, talking about cultural affairs, it reminds me of something Cash did a little while. I mean, sometime last year, but the football tournament, the
Northern Cup.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I think he ran a second one of those while I was gone, but if we could get more things like that, where I know that drew at least a couple people from the game side as well with his dispatches.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. I think it's an issue.
I mean, there's lots of avenues that could be done with game side stuff, really. Like dispatches, polls, R&B presence, hell, even the nation states forums.
Yeah. So, okay, I suggest that we wrap up early because we're nearly there anyway, and there's only the three of us.
Yeah. Well, this has been the fourth National Broadcasting Services broadcast. This has been Darcania.
Abbey.
And Ornge.
Along with help from our technical advisor, Zeliux, who has graciously hosted the actual broadcast. Like, he's the one actually broadcasting on Mixler right now. So thank you to him. A reminder to everyone to endorse too, I guess, because and well, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for attending this Northern Broadcasting Service broadcast. This is Arcania signing out.